Good morning, Yankees universe. KOD Nation, stand up. And you D-Gents, wake up and get your coffee. Welcome to this very special edition of the Yankees Morning Brew. It is Tuesday, September 6th, and we got a special guest, ladies and gentlemen. Like you guys know, like the title says, we will be having on Scotty Braun from the MLB Network in a few minutes just to chop it up this morning. You know, it's not going to only be a Yankee talk. I know, this is a Yankee show, but this is not only going to be a Yankee talk. We'll be getting into all things MLB. I want to ask him about his thoughts on the future schedule when it comes to MLB for 2023, because I know a lot of Yankee fans weren't too happy about the scheduling coming out. But a quick second to salute the chat. Good morning, Mikey Mazza and the 4-Train Express. Salute, salute, salute. Hope all is well. And of course, the evil genius behind the scene, Jigga Man Porto. Good morning, good morning, good morning. But yeah, guys, this is going to be a very interesting and very fun show. So keep you guys in the comments. Let us know what you guys think on certain issues. And let's get into this. But before I bring on my special guest, I want to play a little video before he comes in. I see him backstage. He has his cup of coffee ready to go. And we ready to rock out right now. So let me play this and we'll be right back. Good morning, Mr. Scott. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm great. How you doing?
I'm awesome. First of all, I want to thank you for taking this time to have this conversation in the morning, because I know sometimes it's a bit hectic for people in the morning. So I appreciate you 100%.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, I worked last night. I got another show tonight. My biggest frustration this morning is I hear you. It looks like my mic's on, but
oh, this is what you got to do. You got to go into, I got you right now. You got to go into
let's do a live IT session.
Yeah. You got to go to your settings real quick, right? And you got to click on audio. And then for the speakers, you just got to click on your headset or your AirPods, whatever you're wearing for the speaker.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah. This is much better. And you got me good
aren't
here,
just getting sports. We're getting IT going on right now.
Yeah,
yes,
let's
sir.
Go. And you got me good in the microphone, right?
Yes, sir. Everything is good. Everything's good on sound.
Oh, beautiful. Okay, now I feel much better.
I hope you like that little video in the morning. Yeah, cheers. Hold on 1 second. Cheers.
I'll hold off. Salute. Sip. Cheers.
No, good morning. Cheers. Salute.
But yeah, no, I'm excited to be here. Excited to get into it. I know, as we discussed, and with the Knights of D-Gen team, I cover the Royals and the Twins and the Mariners and go on and on as much as the Yankees. So sometimes when I do a local show, I mean, I watch Yanks and Mets a ton. So just to give perspective, maybe in a different way, I'm watching some of those other ball clubs too, just as much as the beloved squad that most people are here for on your show.
No, definitely. And that's why we always got to get a different perspective, because sometimes Yankee fans like myself, and I'm guilty of this. I can tell you I'm guilty of this. I like to have blinders on. Sometimes you have blinders on and it allows you to lose focus on what's to go. You got a lot of Yankee fans, and we'll get into it, but you got a lot of Yankee fans that are upset with how the team is going right now. And I always tell people, listen, we can't win it every year, right? Mm-hmm. If you take these past 20 years from the Yankees, give that to another sports franchise like the Cleveland Guardians or the Pittsburgh Pirates or the Cincinnati Reds, their fan base will take it. But for some reason, Yankee fans are just a little self-centered and just egotistical. And I can say that as a Yankee fan.
Well, here, let's start with this then. For example, would you rather have the last 2 decades as a Red Sox fan or as a Yankee fan? And I think it's a great question because, of course, those two teams are so closely tied together. But the Red Sox go through these severe ups and downs. I wouldn't even call it rebuild. They don't really rebuild that often. It's just that when they crash hard, where it's a 4th or 5th place finish. The Yankees just don't do that. They're basically competitive every year for the past 2 decades plus, right? Where you're either a playoff team winning 90 plus games, whatever. It's just they're not finishing the job and winning the World Series, where the Red Sox have won more often World Series wise. For me, let's start with you first, and I'll give you my take.
Honestly, it's very hard to even entertain this, but if I had to, I would pick the Red Sox, right? Because deep down, I'm a Knicks fan, right? So I understand when the Knicks win the championship in the next 50, 100, 80 years, whenever it is, I'm going to lose my mind and I'm going to be running through the streets like a lunatic. So as a Red Sox fan, knowing that 2004 was the first time that they won in so many years, and then recently, of course, they had some a run, I think 2017, whatever year what that was, but honestly, I would say a Red Sox fan because it will mean more. It will be more gratifying.
My thing is, I would rather take some bad years for a World Series title because ultimately that's what you're trying to do. It's fun and exciting to be competitive and in the race every year. But if you're not converting championships, then I would rather have, highs and lows and just be okay with it. So that's why for me, sometimes I actually think at this point, Yankee fans have a legitimate gripe, being that you've only won, in 2009, and then you got to go further back for the whole dynasty years. Where when I see a Red Sox fan complain, I'm like, look at the titles you've racked up recently, though. Ever since 2004, it's 3 titles for the Red Sox since
2007, and 2017, I believe. Yep.
So 3 titles for the Red Sox, and I mean, on a lighter extent, you could say that with a franchise like the Cubs, I knew once they won the first time, the fan base was going to change their expectations, and they have. But just to look at a couple examples of teams that have actually gotten rings more frequently than the Yankees recently, that's what I would take. So that's where I understand where Yanks fans are coming from, as long as they're okay with the severe ups and downs. That's the trade-off in my mind. Is I'm not saying the Yankees should be in rebuild mode at any time. I would say the appreciation factor is that you're in it every year, but for some reason you do need to do some self-analysis at some point and say, why aren't we actually, like, we're punching lottery tickets left and right, and there's not that many. It's not a lottery of millions. Why are we not winning the lottery more frequently once we get to the playoffs? Because it is a bit of a crapshoot once you get to the playoffs, but there also are ways to build your team to make it more playoff friendly. I think a team like the Twins have really struggled with that too when they've made it to the playoffs. But something for the Yanks to think about in my mind is, why aren't we winning once we get there? Because we're almost always there in the dance.
Yeah, and you at first you brought up 2 teams that you covered, in the Kansas City Royals and the Seattle Mariners. Kansas City, when they won, it's the same thing, but they're used to the losing, and when they finally win, it's a party. Just like with the Seattle Mariners, they haven't been to the playoffs in the past 20 years, so there's some Mariner fans that are young in their teens that have never seen the Mariners play in the postseason. So there's a lot of Yankee fans. You gotta be grateful. I'm not somebody that's just put a smile on your face and always be happy. No, we gotta be disappointed when we gotta be disappointed. But at the same time, just know that you aren't the Cincinnati Reds. Like,
here's where you can be frustrated, though. Here's the difference. The Yankees, they always do have a top 5 payroll, but with that comes higher expectations because of the way that you're spending. Also, you could make the case that based on where the team's at and how much money they make and how much of a fan base they have, they could even spend more. And now you have this incredible New York rivalry that has renewed and is sparked again. And it doesn't have as much to do with the two teams matching up against each other. They don't play each other a ton. And of course, they're on opposite ends, although I wish that wasn't the case. I wish there was more with the Mets and the Yankees. It's more about the higher level, the front office rivalry that's going on, where you suddenly look across town and you're like, hey, they're spending more than us. And it looks like that's going to be the case for a while. And it's a team that's got a little more of a gunslinger mentality, that's not nitpicking with a luxury tax threshold and getting cute with salaries. Let's add a little here, let's subtract a little here, and stay in this little middle ground. They just, at least to start here, have not displayed caring about that. And fan bases love that, especially if you're in a big market like New York. I mean, they crave that. They're like, oh, you're not worried about a luxury tax threshold. You're not worried about overpaying for a guy that's, like obviously this past offseason, Max Scherzer. I mean, he's getting up there in age, but he's still Max Scherzer. There's higher risk the older he gets, just like there is with most arms. But he's been, when he's on the field, still Max Scherzer, and he's awesome. So I think and hey, the Yankees got Cole. I'm not saying they're not cheap by any means. I'm just saying the expectations when you're in New York we're in a sport that doesn't have a hard salary cap. So let's spend out of our problems, baby. And sometimes they're getting cute with moves.
Yeah. And you bring up Stevie Cohen, and honestly, I think that's a great move for the Mets. Selfishly, I am a Yankee fan, but my mom, she's a diehard Met fan. And I grew up with that dynamic of my mom not wanting me to cheer for the same team as her. She wanted me to root for the Yankees and wanted me to be that opposing figure in the household. So that was a great dynamic growing up. But I've always told people New York City is so much better in the summertime when both teams, are good. It's not just I want the Yankees to be. No, I want there to be competition. If you look at WWE, that's why WWE I know is totally different. But WWE for years they were just very stale because there was no competition. Now you have competition in the market space. Now it just spices things up. And now for the Yankees and the Mets in New York City, they have to figure out, okay, who's going to be able to win over this new generation? Because now you got kids that are growing up with Stevie Cohen being the owner of the Mets, and knowing that he's willing to spend money, not the prior regime that was in charge.
Yeah. Oh, he's a star. I mean, I love where the Mets are at, and not just even from a front office and a budgeting perspective. Even when you go to the games, it feels different. There's more entertainment value. There's more customer service. I mean, everything in my mind has evolved and really become a first-class organization in a very short period of time. When you think about it, I'm a big electronic music fan too. So having the whole Narco Edwin Diaz entrance music has really lit me up and brought two of my favorite worlds together. And they've embraced that. See, think about it. They take that one step further. Okay, we're going to bring in Timmy Trumpet and have him do this thing live. And I think there are more surprises that you can expect around things like that as well. Live music performances basically during games. So these are things that I think in 2022, fans deserve to have. Creativity when you've got a game going on every single day. Can we do something a little bit different? Let's, the Old Timers Day that they just created, the Mets. So we can wax poetic for them for a second, because you had a lot of players coming back that were like, we didn't have much of a relationship with the team. We thought also we should have an Old Timers Day. We've been around long enough. So you add all of that up. It was another unique, incredible one-day experience that separated itself from the rest of the regular season games. So, and the Yanks have been doing stuff like that for years, so they do a great job with that. But now you have, like you said, it's great to have two teams in the top market in the country in terms of population and interest and everything else, going at it like that, and both kind of representing themselves as first-class organizations.
Yeah. And, you hit it right on the head when you talk about it's 2022. We got to get more creative when it comes to fan interaction and getting people to the ballpark. One thing I can say, I'm super jealous of the Mets and their fan base because of the whole Timmy Trumpets. I am super jealous. I wish the Yankees could take the corporate stick out of, where, and just allow them to be themselves. Just remove that corporate nonsense that you have. I understand the history. We could respect the history while at the same time being fun and being entertaining for the fan base. I've gone to a few minor league games this year. I went to the Tampa Bay Tarpons, Somerset Patriots that I was planning to go to, but going to see the Brooklyn Cyclones and Coney Island, that is amazing. By far hands the best minor league experience I've had, and it's from the Mets. And you could tell that it's from a top-down organization. It's not just random, it's a top-down organization. But in 2022, I just want to ask you, how do you think MLB and different teams could win over that kid that's deciding if he wants to play basketball or baseball?
Oh, so you're talking about from a playing perspective, from a sports playing perspective, because that's different from a fan base perspective too, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you're saying, hey, we're different leagues and we're competing for eyeballs and passionate fans. Of course, you can be fans of multiple teams, but if you're, that is actually one of the top ways what you bring up. So they do tie into each other.
Yeah,
so
there's intersectionality there.
Yeah, if you're playing the sport at a young age and you continue it, you're most likely going to be a fan of that sport as well. I mean, there are multiple studies to show that. So that's one way. It's just making the sport as accessible as possible in every single community. And that's something that the sport's been, that the sport, I don't want to say been working on. It's a continuous thing to create as many programs free as much as possible too in areas that socioeconomic wise need the help, right? Need the fields, the bats, the baseballs, the whole thing. So that's definitely part of it. You want to get baseballs and gloves and bats into as many young hands as possible to get them familiar with the game, to get them to play the game easily. I mean, in terms of say prospects, like if you're a big deal player at a young age, it's definitely different. The days of sandlot baseball and then discovering, there's the best kid in the sandlot is getting recognized by someone and let's move them up the ladder. Nowadays you have all kinds of travel ball and tournaments and the perfect games of the world. So, and then there's pros and cons to that as well. You're probably developing better baseball players by getting them in the system like that, where you have top end coaching and resources available, but you also are to an extent most likely shutting out certain people that can't get their way into that system or maybe are late bloomers. So there's a lot there. We can go down the whole youth sports conversation for a while. I don't know if this fan base is as interested in that, but that's that on a higher level. Let's talk entertainment factor.
Yeah.
I think it comes down to highlighting the talent as much as possible. And using that Edwin Diaz example is perfect. And I've been pushing this since day one that I've been a full-timer in baseball. Everyone should have signature moments. So, for example, if Edwin Diaz has created this entrance music out of the bullpen that people have gripped, why isn't every closer and basically reliever in the game coming up with something similar, And it's not that difficult. It's not like he does a whole, song and dance and a cha-cha running out of the bullpen.
Yeah.
It's just you found a song that clicked. And I think others can do the same. Find a song that clicks. Make it a thing in the ballpark, right? Maybe it's a song that has some interaction to it where there's a part where everyone claps, right? There are certain players that have walk-up songs like that too. And then other things to think about, for example, Edwin Encarnacion, who's not playing in the bigs anymore, but recently in the bigs, right? Exactly. When I said his name, immediately you went like that because he has a very simple signature trot around the bases. Why doesn't everybody do that? Not this. Why doesn't everybody have something? Many of them do. Yeah, many of them do, but it's so simple or unrecognizable, right? Judge has this thing where he's kind of jumping up and right. What is it? He's kind of jumping up and
he does a basketball between. Yeah.
So there's stuff like that helps. But yeah, I would say. And many players have their, either their superstition or their celebration and a lot of handshakes and all of that. But I'd like to see that amped up more because immediately when I say Encarnacion, everybody knows about it. There was I'm trying to remember the name. I think it was Adam Rosales, maybe. What was the name? There was a player who was on the A's very frequently. Recently out of the bigs too. I'm trying to remember, but he would sprint around the bases when he hit homers. So same thing. We knew you knew who he was when he was playing. And this was a guy who was a fringe big leaguer, kind of up and down and didn't make it for a long period of time. But when he was there and he did homer, everybody knew about it and knew what he was going to do. So those are little things.
Yeah, it's the little subtle things like you said, just Edwin Encarnacion, like just going like this, and I get it. There's probably some pitchers in the big leagues like Madison Bumgarner who's just a lunatic on his own, but that probably wouldn't like if somebody's running around the bases with something like that. But I agree with you 100%. As a kid who grew up and and like New York City, NYCHA and the projects and stuff, it was very easy for me and my friend group to go outside of our building and play baseball, right? But it wasn't a field around us, so we could go and play on the field. You know, we could go outside in front of our building, grab 6 or 7 of us and play a good game and just pass it around. But it was easy for us to go to the basketball court and have an actual basketball court to fall in love with the sport. You know, if we had a baseball field like you was talking about, we probably would have, you know, probably leaned more to baseball because of the field right there and the experience. But having the court, it just adds a different element, like you said. And there has to be a way to figure it out, that you know, the initiative, like you said, to get more bats, to get more gloves, to get more balls in the hands of kids that don't have the socioeconomic standards, like you said, Scott. And I appreciate you for saying that. Question though, because I know a lot of people's like, all right, what are we gonna talk about next? But the 2023 schedule that came out right for next year. What's your thoughts on it? Because personally, myself, I love it. I love the fact that every team is going to play each other. Go ahead, bro.
Oh, love it. And this is actually, all of these little things add up. This is another great point to make. Best player in the sport, whoever it is at the time, or your favorite player, or a player besides your own ball club that you just love to watch. Often you're not seeing him in your home ballpark for your team. So, you know, if you're a Mets fan, I'm just using Mets because they're in the National League and there's some top American League players. So if you're a Mets fan and your favorite player is Mike Trout, favorite player is Shohei Ohtani, favorite player is Julio Rodriguez, those players, think of it almost like a musician going on tour. They're not skipping cities that they should be in. So those players belong in every big league city at least once per year. That's simple. Now, on the other end of that, you do create potentially a more challenging travel schedule, depending on how the outlook is, because you're not within your division as much. Although I'm a little more radical. So big picture, when I'm looking at things, I think ultimately we are going to have realignment one day. I hope that it's soon. I'm a huge proponent of it. And here's why. I think players will perform better if, for example, let's use Yankees and Mets. They should be within the same division, conference, whatever you want to call it. One, because they're so close by. Two, it would be a great natural rivalry. I haven't met anybody recently that said, you know what? There's too many Mets-Yankees games. Most say, I wish there were more. And those games always do well. Sure, can you hit a limit where there's too many? But we're already now reducing that. We're not going to have as many interdivision games. So I just think in terms of who's in your backyard, you should be playing them a ton. I don't care as much about the fact, because I've seen some writers actually, when the schedule came out, there were a few writers that I follow who said, well, this better not be on a pathway to realignment. That would be terrible. They can't get rid of how the whole setup is. And I'm like, why? Every other sport does whatever's best to serve their fan base. Not to mention the players will perform better if they don't have to be on an airplane for as many hours. That's a fact. You talk to anybody, and hey, I travel every single week on an airplane. I mean, if I didn't have to do that every week, I'd probably be better. And I'm not even physically performing. I'm just moving my mouth a million times an hour. But and lastly, and I'm big on this too, is it's like a waste of fuel. Like, look at where we're at. Even, you know, I'm not even trying to get political with it, but like, why are we flying planes around? Like, you know, and I was recently in Seattle, so it's like, can we get some more, you know, every game's going to be a trip for them when they're on the road, but can we keep them more in that portion of the country a little frequently? So I think there's a balance here where every team can hop around the country and make sure they at least make one stop there, so that you can circle on your calendar, I'm going to see this superstar once a year that I want to see, right? Like Julio Rodriguez is going to be a top 5 player in the bigs by next year or the year after, tops. You know, he's already making a significant climb, and he's already the face of the Mariners. So same thing. I want him to be able to stop at every ballpark, but I also want them to be, I just think AL, there aren't any rule differences nowadays either. So eventually this is not going off inside sources. You can read this just like, you know, the Ken Rosenthal's of the world just as much as anyone else. I think eventually you'll hit a point where, and maybe it's when the league say adds 2 teams, so you're at 32 and they go 16-16 split. Let's realign and do this based on regions. Most of the rivalries will stay the same, because most of the biggest rivalries still do have to do with regions anyway. You know, Dodgers, Giants, Yankees, Red Sox, like that will still exist. It's just like the division or conference will also have the Mets with the Yankees and the Red Sox and the Nationals when they're good, you know, and the Phillies. Like you'll have that Northeast pocket. So that's where I'm at on scheduling. I think it's great, and we're on a pathway that makes a lot of sense for promoting the game.
Like you said, it just makes so much sense going forward. Every other major sports league in the country has done it. Every major North American sports league has done it. Hockey, basketball, the NFL, you know. And I understand there's a lot of fans that love to conserve the old ways of Major League Baseball, and they want to keep it that way because that's how they grew up with. But they got to understand this is not the 1920s. This is not the 1930s. We don't got baseball players named PJ Washington or Peanut Butter Stick Wilson out there on the field anymore. You know, it's just 2022, and I think just like you said, it will help the teams if they can have more scheduling on the Northwest, right? Yes, they could come around to the East Coast, but if they could play majority of their games in that same region, it'll be a lot better on their bodies at the same time. It'll be better for their bodies. It'll be better for their health, you know, because you'll have more people in that area and you'll be able to bounce them around. Scheduling wise, it will make it a lot easier, but a lot of people are scared. Oh, you know, what if there's rainouts next year? What with the double headers and stuff? Like we've been dealing with that this year. Like that's been an issue this year, and they figured it out, and they will figure it out next year. If they got to extend the postseason an extra week just to make up some games, why not? So be it.
We basically did that this year anyway. Look, I mean, I'm putting together my October schedule right now, and I've gotten some of my not travel assignments, but just getting into my calendars. That's a separate show. But it's the last possible day of the World Series is November 5th. Now, in an ideal world, I would like it to end a little earlier than that, just based on the fact that, the weather could get pretty damn cold by that time.
You're not trying to see another Mr. November? You're not trying to get another Mr. November moment?
I would like to. I wish we could play year round, but I also want to give people a break. No. My thing is just I don't think the best World Series experience is when it's potentially 20 degrees in New York or something. I mean, I also wish that we had retractable roofs for every ballpark, and that wouldn't be an issue either. But that's a deeper topic than most people think too, because apparently I've learned about this because I used to call it out, but apparently some ballparks based on their location aren't even allowed to build one with city ordinances, whatever it is.
So they don't own the restrictions over the stadiums,
the air rights,
stadiums, the air rights, the airspace.
Well, I think some of them too, like, and don't quote me on this, you'd have to ask somebody, but I think, for example, this was one of my biggest questions, and this was before, because I don't remember when Target Field was built, the Twins' new home. But of course, the Twins' old home, the Metrodome, you were covered. The Twins' new home, and Minnesota's weather is not great. They should have a retractable roof, but they're in such a great location within the city. I think that they're not allowed to put one was part of the explanation based on how close they are to other buildings. I don't remember if that was Minnesota or Cleveland or both, but just to give an idea that, because I was like, we need a roof here. Like, it's Minnesota. It's snowing in the beginning of the year and could be at the end of the year. And there's plenty of rain, and it comes really at random times where they can't even predict it. But if you have to make the trade-off there and make the game more accessible in an area that everyone wants to go to a ballpark, and it's a higher population density, then I guess there's trade-offs. But anyway, to your point, scheduling wise, we've always been able to figure. Have we ever hit a point where we're like, you know what? We actually don't know what to do. We have 5 games to make up, and we can't fit it in. We always make it work.
Yeah. They'll figure it out. They'll move some games around. They'll do whatever they can to figure it out. But I want to ask you this, because this trade deadline that happened recently, right? You had Castillo go to Seattle. You said you covered Seattle. Is there insight to the trade deadline or just trade season in general that a normie like me from the outside wouldn't understand, like what really goes into making these deals with the GMs?
I would say yes and no. The reason why I say let's start with no is that there's so many resources available for fans nowadays that didn't used to exist. So what I mean by that is, for me, for example, most of the information that I'm getting, the really heavy stuff, is by reading the top writers and insiders in the sport. Anyone can do that. Now, do I work with some of those writers and can have more personal and even quote off the record, kind of conversations with them on something maybe they weren't allowed to share. Sure. Also, I do spend time at different ballparks each week, so I can have conversations with coaches and front office members. So I would say, even if I didn't have those conversations, I would still understand how difficult it is to actually execute a trade. I mean, if you're a fan, you generally look in, May or June, and you're like, I know what the problems are already. Why can't we make this deal now? Well, generally the reason for that is that the price is too high, and it will come down as the days tick on and we get closer to the deadline. It's a sport that works off deadlines, and many people work off deadlines in general when it comes to getting a deal done. So I think that anyone can understand that. I think the differences are when I'm talking to a coaching staff over the last month. See, I don't know, like, I got a story. I don't know how much I can share on it, but where I'm at, okay, I'll generalize. I went to a coach. I asked him, hey, you guys had a significant need. There was a player that made a ton of sense. Why didn't that happen? He said, we went after that player hard. The asking price was not only super high, but the team said they were so overwhelmed that they weren't able to do the homework on our prospects that they needed to do. So they were not going to trade that player unless they made just a drastic overpay that we just couldn't make. That wouldn't make sense. Like, that most people would look at and say, whoa, they gave up way too much. So he said, we'll revisit it in the offseason. So, and unfortunately, there weren't many players that fit the mold. So if that describes things. So I'll give one more example, because I don't know the inside story in this, and I'm covering this team this week. So my last game, unfortunately, just turned out for YouTube. So I'm the voice of YouTube baseball, which we do a game of the week. It's been awesome. We talked a lot about Seattle too. Like, we had Guardians, Mariners the other day. Great game. Nice. Last week we had the White Sox, and they're becoming relevant with a few weeks left. They're very much in the AL Central race. This week, we happen to have the Cubs and Reds. Some of these schedules get set like well in advance. And I could have told you, if you asked me before the season, they're not going to be good. But we just happen to be at Wrigley for a game here this week. How does Wilson Contreras not get dealt? He's a free agent after the season, even if you want to keep him. And to me, when you're a front office, you're going in. Now you can give him a qualifying offer and get a pick back. So if you think that pick is better than anything you've gotten, and maybe that's the case, maybe I sit down with somebody when I'm out there and they go, you know what, I'll tell you what our best offer was, privately. And you tell me if you'd rather have that prospect or a pick. And maybe that was the case. But otherwise, I'm like, you have an asset. Catchers are a little tougher to trade. They have their value's a little lower than most during the middle of the season, because teams are worried about catchers learning a pitching staff. But that's what I'm saying is I'm even looking at that going, Ian Happ still has a year left. So if they didn't get what they want, okay. But there were two players there that were on hug, not just hug watch. They were like getting the standing O from the fans, like, I think in tears. They're hugging the whole thing, and they didn't trade them. So for me, how does Wilson
makes it very awkward?
Awkward. And also even as a Cubs fan, like, I'm looking and saying, okay, we're not competing this year. Even if we love Wilson and we want to bring him back, then bring him back in the offseason. Like, we need to get someone for him, because we're not contending. Someone else can use him. And to tie it all in, the Mets certainly could have used him. I'm sure there were conversations. I only know what everyone else has read, but it didn't happen. But that's an example of what your original question was, is I think it's a little bit of both. I do get some other stories that fans don't have access to, but generally, even if I wasn't getting those stories, I would understand that not every deal gets done because of, usually an over ask that goes, everyone has a limit. Like, you can say, hey, let's get this guy at all costs, but you're not going to give up every prospect you have for them, in almost any case.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Like, in terms of Seattle, when it comes to Luis Castillo, they were willing to give up the extra prospect that the Yankees weren't willing to give up in order to get him. And if you're Seattle, you got to make that move. You make that move 10 times out of 10, because you haven't been in the postseason in 20 years, and you haven't had this type of pitcher since King Felix was, in Seattle, but circling back, because you all the work that you're doing with the MLB network, you said you do the YouTube shows. How did you get your start in this industry? I have a young man that I have two actually that come on and help me with the show. Halal, who's 12, and my guy Frankie, who just went off to college. But how did you get your start? Did you always figure that this was the lane that you wanted to go into, or was little Scott Braun? Did he have another dream that he wanted to pursue?
I did. I wanted to be in the NBA, age 5
Wow.
to age 10. And at age 10, this is always the story I use. I was in an 11 and under basketball tournament with my summer team. And there was a player who was 11. I was a year younger there, but who was dunking. And I said, backup plan necessary. So very astute little 10-year-old going, just in case, because you're walking around. I wasn't cocky. I was just like, I wasn't walking around going, I'm going to be in the NBA. But if, when you're a kid, you get asked when you're around company or family friends or whatever, they're like, oh, what do you like? What do you want to do when you're older? I'm like, oh, I want to be in the NBA. And the reason I didn't mention MLB is I played Little League too, but I was better at basketball. And so I was like, oh, this is my best chance. I want to be a pro athlete. This sounds great. I mean, I watched them on TV. Looks like they're living the life. You just get paid to play sports. I'm in. Count me in. I'll do whatever I need to do. And I was like, okay, even if I'm training hours and hours per day, I just think I don't have a natural gift or size necessarily. I'm not small. I'm 6'2". So, I mean, there's players that my size that have made it to the NBA, but obviously they're the best athletes on the planet. And there is some natural talent involved. So anyway, at age 10, I started already looking into what broadcasting was. And it started with the simple question of, I lived in New Jersey. So very cheap and easy to go to Nets games at the time because they weren't that good. I mean, this is back in the early 90s. And I would go, hey, who's that guy sitting courtside? My dad's like, oh, that's the play-by-play announcer, which most of the time I think was Ian Eagle in the 90s. And so I learned about what he did. He actually, Ian Eagle and a couple other local broadcasters would do like a little local broadcasting program. This is where it's all about. Like, can you, just like what we're talking about, can you make broadcasting accessible for kids? And there are local broadcasters that did that. And I speak at a lot of different camps and programs like that in the area, just so I can tell my story and also just answer questions. So anyway, I started learning about broadcasting at literally age 10. I still played sports throughout, up until I graduated high school. But
yeah, for sure.
I was, and very different times, but I was practicing at home. So I learned from those broadcasters that I spoke to, or if I read an article, say in the newspaper at the time about, hey, how I got my start, some broadcaster in the business, they'd say, oh, I would turn the dial down on my television and I would broadcast over it. So I was like, oh, that's cool. I'll do that a little bit. But I was like, wait, I'll take that one step further. I love video games. I'm playing triple play, and I'm playing, a lot of the EA games back then, NHL 99 and, NBA, Jam and whatever, all the good stuff, all the nostalgic classics. And I would create scenarios and broadcast over them. So that was my practice. So, and then if you want to fast forward and get into all the different career moves and all that, I actually worked for the Somerset Patriots. I lived nearby. I was their on-field host for part of high school. So I'd be on the field going over, trivia and games and events and all that kind of stuff. And then if we want to keep progressing, a million jobs forward and eventually landing with MLB. But summers in the Cape Cod Baseball League, broadcasting up there, created a media program up there where we would put, then finally we're getting more out of the Stone Age where we have a flip cam and we're putting the interviews on YouTube. And I actually was broadcasting with a number. It was cool team my first year there. Whit Merrifield, Matt Harvey, and many other big leaguers, either former or guys that had a cup of coffee, probably 10-ish guys on that first year that I was in the Cape League. So there's a lot we could do again. An hour plus on the career, but I was in it at a young age. I was like, I'm doing this. What do I need to do? Can I figure out any little way to get involved? Local news station, News 12, I worked for them. So just was bouncing all around, giving my time and also trying to make myself valuable. So that's a good, I would say that's the one tip to take out of it for, like, say, your production team behind the scenes, which they're already doing, is when I was learning from someone or interning or assisting with anything, I was also always thinking, like, how can these people are going to be helpful and gracious with my time if I can also bring them as much value as possible. So, if that's doing research, but for me, I was trying to take it always one step further. Like, how can I make what they're doing better by bringing them some ideas or some tech that that can enhance what they're doing. So like at News 12 New Jersey, I figured out some ways to help them optimize covering more high school football games on Friday nights with them. So that I made myself extra useful. And that's how I became ingrained in that system in high school.
You built your value. You built your value and showed them what your value was. Like, as a guy that I'm super cordial and friends with, Nathan right here. He covers the Somerset Patriot for the New Jersey Sports Network, I believe that is the name of it. But yeah, he covers the Somerset Patriots. And it's funny you talk about Jersey. I have family that live in Jersey. And it's a running joke. My family's from Long Branch, like Ocean Grove Township, and it's a running joke with them because I always talk about, like, is Jersey really a real place? Right? Because there's not a lot of people that rep that they're from Jersey. So I was surprised when you said it. You got some people that say, "Oh, I'm from Philly," or "I'm from New York." What's your thoughts on it? And mind you, it's just a running joke that we have with my family.
No, I have. Yeah, you can rip away. Yeah, I grew up here, so and there's certainly pros and cons. Also, tons of misconceptions. I think most of my life where I've lived has been full of misconceptions. So grew up in Jersey, and then I went to school at the University of Miami, and same thing down there, where they think like I'm living like basically, in Live nightclub on South Beach. Like it's nice. that school's actually in Coral Gables. It's a private, smaller school. It's under 10,000. Like people think it's this massive party state school and all that, and it's not. I mean, there's certainly things to do. You're in Miami, so you can make the most of it if you want to and go nuts. But same thing. So in Jersey, especially when I was in college, it was just, I think, the beginning of Jersey Shore. So then you're there and they just think everyone you're around, because I'm at a very diverse school in terms of where everyone's from. And everyone's like, "Oh, you're from Jersey," and they're all huge Jersey Shore fans. I'm like, "Nah, I'm not from Seaside. Like, I'm from like small town suburbia. Everything closed at 8 p.m. No beach around. I mean, I would go down the shore sometimes, but I say I'm from Central Jersey. I mean, I'm not. I'm also. Hey, I have some friends that say that they're from Philly, and they're further from Philly than I am from New York City. And I'm like, well, why don't you just say that you're from Pennsylvania or from South Jersey? If it takes you, if you're 5 minutes from Philly, I also just think if you're from the city, like living inside the city, or from inside the city. If you're not, just say where you're from. I mean, unless you're international, if you're in Europe and I'm trying to tell someone where I'm from, I might say, "Oh, I'm from around New York City." Fine. But if you're within the country, I have friends that will be like, "Oh, I live in Lower Merion and it's like 40 minutes from Philadelphia." I'm like, just say you're from Pennsylvania. You're not from Philadelphia. I mean, it takes me 40 minutes to get from my hometown to New York City. I don't say I'm from New York City. I say I'm from Central Jersey. So that's how I look at it. And a lot of people I work with actually think I'm from Miami, because I love South Florida. I just fell in love with Miami and Fort Lauderdale and all the cities down there when I lived down there, and lived there a little bit after college too. And so I have a lot of pride for my time there. So sometimes people are like, "Oh, Miami guy." I'm like, no, I'm actually from Jersey, but I'm fine with either one.
As a New Yorker, I love Florida, but it was a culture shock for me when I first got down there, and I realized that the crazy drivers that are driving in Florida are just retired New Yorkers. So I had to realize that at first, and then I was able to process it. Like, all right, cool, these are just retired New Yorkers. I understand why they're so aggressive. I get it. It's the heat that's getting to them. But
wait, I'll tell you real quick. You know what you've done? I've noticed over the first like 40 minutes here is, every time you bring something up, this is very good on topics and interviews. I go, "Oh, we could do an hour just on that." Like,
yeah,
New York and Florida driving and all that, because I drive half the days from New York City back out to New Jersey. I mean, I could do a whole show on. You could do power rankings on cities, and the only thing I'll say with that is, you're right. There are many crazy drivers down in South Florida that are just whatever you call them, either transplants or snowbirds, where they're down there. But New York is the toughest and most aggressive driving in the country. I've driven in every major city, and it's, in my mind, not even close. So I'm not. That's not a brag. It's just saying, like, that's if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. If you can drive to work from New York to New Jersey every day, then you can drive anywhere.
I compare it. You remember that scene? I believe it was from Matrix 2 when they said, "Don't get on the highway." I compare it to that. Driving to New York City is like the Matrix when they tell you, "Don't get on the highway." Like, I compare it to that all the time.
Yeah, I actually just watched Matrix 3 like a couple of days ago late at night. I couldn't sleep. So yes, I know what you're talking about, and it is very, very challenging. Like just, you'll drive. It's like the battle for that one extra inch can turn into an accident and a fight on the street. Like
Yeah. Oh no,
that's a real,
definitely.
that's like stuff I see on an almost weekly basis. Not that exact
That
story. I've seen that, but
we could do
things
power.
like
We
that
could do,
almost every week.
like you said, we could do power rankings on different exit. Which exit is the worst one to get out of in New York City? Because you have so many different exits that the traffic could just keep getting worse and worse and worse. But you bring up University of Miami. So they were people trying to guess which day you went to the gym, which day you tan, and which day you did your laundry, your gym tan laundry. Was that the running joke down there?
I think there was more of that in South Florida than there is in Jersey as a whole. In Jersey, that's mostly down the shore. Or I mean, there's definitely a pretty solid weightlifting culture. The tanning and the laundry is really just New Jersey Shore stuff. So you certainly got the jokes and all of that. Although I wouldn't put myself in the Pauly D. What's the main guy? What's the main guy's name?
You got Ronnie, you got Pauly D, you get the situation.
Yeah, so
I actually grew up and I'm friends with Ronnie's cousin because I live in the Bronx, Pelham Bay area. So I grew when I found out that his cousin was on the Jersey Show. I was like, Jesus Christ, I don't want to talk to none of you guys no more. Like you guys aren't Italian, you're Puerto Rican.
And it was a great conversation starter in college, I will say. Like for anyone you're meeting where you're like,
it's a good icebreaker.
And you go Jersey and they're like, oh, I love Jersey Shore. And I'm like, oh, cool. I mean, I'm nowhere from that, not really near that. I'm as near the Jersey Shore where I grew up as these, Philly people that live in hour from Philly.
But I want to get into the Only Gems project that you got that you guys are working on. How did you get involved with this Only Gems? And show off the merch. And for the people that are in the chat that have no idea what Only Gems is, can you give them a brief spill on it?
Yeah, absolutely. So and also how I got involved with them as well, because it's pretty organic. Is first of all, I'm a huge fan of vaulting cards, and that means for me, I'll tie this into how I got involved. My parents were selling their house in my hometown a year and a half ago, and we have a lot of my cards from growing up, the whole deal, right? And they're downsizing, so it's got to go somewhere. I don't have space for all that stuff, and some of the the commons, the penny cards, whatever, that's different. You can bundle those up and give them away even to kids just to get them involved in the hobby. But you have your tons of graded cards, and it's like, what are you doing with all of this? In my mind, that belongs in a safe space, and if there's a company that's going to keep that for me, yes, please. So I think vaulting has exploded, and then what Only Gems does is take it one step further. This is, in my mind, I don't know how deep in Web3 this audience is, but where one of the best parts of Web3 is being able to say, okay, let's take this one step further. Let's send these graded cards into a company that's going to hold them for me and contain my assets, and then mint that into an NFT. So I can actually still show off my collection on my phone as an NFT. To me, that stands out a ton. And as I'm talking here, I'll just pull up a card or two just to give people an example. And then the next step, to me, I want to be able to one click buy, sell, and trade cards, right? Like the eBay process since the Mariners last made the playoffs beyond, where you take the card, you get it graded, you put it up online, you got to get people to trust you, avoid all the scammers, send the card out, give eBay like a fifth of the fee as it is, like the whole thing. Not only is it a pain in the ass, but it also, here's a huge issue. If I'm a kid and I'm not rich, which is most kids, then it's not worth selling I'm like losing money selling my cards unless I'm going through a process like what Only Gems does, where you can just you often never physically need to touch the card. If I want to just trade and buy and sell cards, right? Like I should be able to do that and just show them off in my wallet. So I'll show you an example here.
It's basically like when the iPod first came out, it's basically being able to put all your cards on an iPod.
Exactly. Yes. So I just want to make sure I'm not giving away anything. Here's like an Ohtani card I have, right? So I own this card. This card is in the Only Gems vault. And when I want to show it off, show it around, this is now in my collection in MetaMask or OpenSea. And that's where many of my other cards are as well. So, and I can trade that card, sell that card quickly. And then the next step too is gamification of that card, where we're going to do this eventually with fantasy baseball, but we're already doing it right now. And there's, I think, a day or two left to get involved. So if you want to get involved, hit me up and I can give you more details. But we have a fantasy football league that's based around your cards. So the cards you have are actually the fantasy players that you own. So it's like putting your cards to work, where you can be involved in a fantasy league. And then you can have two of the cards are also based on the value of the card. So, if you have a Brady card that's worth X, that's worth more than a Brady card that's worth, let's say there's a Brady card worth $10 versus a Brady card that's worth $1,000. That $1,000 Brady card has more power. So it's, people like to, in other worlds, like Top Shot, show off the value of what they have. This is the same case here, where you can show off your cards, put them to work, involve them in games. So there's so many layers here that make me excited to be a part of this. So anyway, when I heard that all of this was going on and I could keep this in my phone, the last thing I'll tell you on this is I was at the National Card Show recently in Atlantic City.
Nice.
And there are, I did this with Porto. So if he's watching, he's going to crack up. We already did this. I'm looking around every second. I'm like giggling inside, looking at people that, like there's a guy there's millions of dollars of cards all over the place. And they're just like they're walking around like with suitcases and briefcases and they're putting them down. And I'm also having a heart attack that someone's just going to run away with it, which I'm sure there's theft going on there. So there's a guy, I don't remember, maybe he's in his 30s. He's got a big collection. He's got like a couple briefcases. He puts one down. He sees one of his friends that he maybe hasn't seen in a year, goes to dap him up. And his briefcase is open and just out there because it was open. He's like sorting through it. How is this still a thing in 2022? Yeah. Like this should be digitally held. Like we know if your card is a unique NFT, like we know what your card is and it's graded. Like if you want to bring that to a show, that's how you should be selling your cards and trading your cards. You shouldn't be bringing every damn physical card with you from San Jose to Atlantic City and having a heart attack about getting it stolen or losing it and organizing it. It's ridiculous that still exists. And that's where Only Gems comes in, where to bring cards to the modern world.
And that guy sounded like me when I was in high school, when I was trying to put all my Yu-Gi-Oh cards in my book bag and go to school. It was probably me in an alternate timeline. But
that's what it is. No, that's really what it is. And there are thousands of people like that are at all of these card shows. So converting those people to say, you still have this card, and also if you're watching, you're going, wait, but now it's just an NFT and it's only digital. No, like if I sell that Ohtani card that I just showed you to the biggest Shohei Ohtani fan in the world, and he's like, I'm creating a Shohei Ohtani shrine. I want every single card, on my wall. Then great. You let Only Gems know, and they burn the NFT and they send you the card. So it's a very easy process. And this is where Web3, I think, can shine and actually help the hobby, help trading, and especially for youngsters at a much easier level versus having to actually have physical BS that we deal with. The physical card still exists. It's just like the friction within transactions. It's got to stop.
Yeah, it's what it is. It's I think a lot of people, they're scared of change, right? They're scared of technology and they're scared of change. You see it now when people are so adverse to green energy and stuff, and they don't want to talk about green energy. And I joke around. I'm like, you'll be the same guys that you'll be advocating to keep the horse and carriage around when cars first came around. If you guys have that same mindset, you got to trust technology and allow it to be convenient for you and allow it to make your life easier.
Well, this is where we come in with baseball too. I've used this for years. So I do a podcast called Legends Lounge for Sirius XM for their MLB Network radio channel, where we interview former legends and all that. And you can see info on my socials, but that's my little drop in there. But the point is, I used to host live shows more frequently for them. And I was like the progressive young guy I'm not trying to change the entire sport. I'm just trying to help the sport evolve with for example, I was huge on not having unlimited timeouts, right? We have a limit on timeouts now on mound visits and timeouts that you can call. No one even flinches about it. Casual fans don't even know it exists. But for someone that watches a game every day, when Yachty or McCann or any of those guys, it's not that I didn't fault them. They were just taking advantage of a rule that didn't exist, where they could go talk to their pitcher every other pitch if they wanted to. And when you're watching every day, you're like, okay, that didn't used to happen. It's just that now, modern world, they're taking advantage of those rules. We need to update that and now put a limit on that. It's not going to change the game at all. And I remember even when I was talking about a little rule change like that made a big difference, and you get pushback, I'd be like, cool. Well, then you're the same person that, gets a cut on your arm and it gets infected and and it has to get amputated, where nowadays, you put a little neosporin on it. But if you want to just keep everything OG, then go back to the 1700s and do everything that we were supposed to do back then. Like, that's what I'm talking about with evolution. It doesn't mean change. It just means making things better. And that can be debated. I can go all day about pitch clock because I've called major minor league games and I'm a huge fan of it. But same thing again. I mean, I know there's a line. It's not like we're suddenly going, okay, instead of a baseball bat, let's replace it with a laser. Okay, there's a line. We get it. We're not even close to it. We make little tweaks just to improve the overall experience and also when the world evolves, we see front offices and players take advantage of things that did exist in the past and actually take it away from what we fell in love with. Like a pitch clock has to do with pace of the game. That wasn't a problem in the 70s, 80s, and even parts of the 90s because pitchers were going at batters quicker and batters weren't taking 30 seconds in between every single pitch, even if they didn't swing at the pitch. So these are just making little tweaks that monitor the game and make sure that the game that many fell in love with and this original great product continues to keep up with the modern world.
Yeah, but you bring up a great example with the pitchers in the 70s. They weren't trying to be slow with the game because they were pitching the entire game. They were more likely to pitch 8 or 9 or 7 innings back then than what they are right now.
But they also weren't slow between pitches. Like, I've actually done the homework here because I work in the sport. Like, watch a game from 1979 and you'll go, whoa, it was a 2-hour, 22-minute game. And I felt like I was getting action the whole time. Now, there are other parts of this. But, for example, the batter stays in the box. The pitcher gets the ball and starts to pitch again. Like, now it's a whole song and dance, and it's just dead time. So we're going to get rid of that. I mean, I'm pretty confident going to be in effect next year. And it'll make just as much of a difference for the hitters as it does for the pitchers, because if the hitter's not in the box at whatever second they come up with, because they've tinkered with different seconds, like should the clock be 15 or 12, whatever, and also with runners on base versus not. But the point is, there'll be a violation on the hitter too if that hitter's not in the box with X amount of seconds to go. So it'll be like, all right, that's an automatic strike. Get in the damn box next time, and that matters. That will help. We're not doing it to a point where we're going to get a pitch every 5 seconds. But it needs to speed up because that's not how the game was built. It's just that they didn't create that rule because they didn't need to at the time.
It was like an unwritten rule that everybody knew you had to be ready, in the box or on the mound, regardless. You can't take time. And going to see the Tampa Tarpons and the Brooklyn Cyclones, you notice that, especially going to see low A baseball, you notice the pitcher count, that clock that they have in the outfield, and as well the batters and the catcher, they get to challenge if the ball was a strike or if it was a ball. To me, I never saw that. So watching the Tampa Tarpons and seeing, I was wondering what was he doing, but I seen the batter step out and ask the umpire to challenge it. The umpire goes like this, and then 2 seconds later, they reverse the call. So I never saw that before, and I think that is something that the game should lean towards. But you understand, there's egos involved, so a lot of the umpires are going to have their egos hurt when they have one of their calls reversed. Like, we've seen it with Angel Hernandez back in, I think it was 2016 or 2017, when he called the ball, it was a home run, but he called it a double, and as soon as it was reversed, he took the headset off and he threw it. Oh, you're muted, bro. You're muted. Sorry. Oh, you're muted. I can't hear you, brother.
Well, let me unmute.
There you go.
Sorry, I was saying, I think I got excited on my last answer a little too much, and I'm back.
You're back.
You're talking. You went in a lot of different directions. Automatic ball and strike eventually, robo, whatever you want to call it. Yes, instant replay is a great example. Again, I mean, back then, I'm tight with Jim Bowden, who's on Sirius, and I've done many shows with him in the past, and he's a superstar baseball analyst. And I remember at one point he told me, he was one of very few and almost laughed out of the room when they were voting for instant replay, whenever it was 30 years ago, something like that. Now, imagine a world, like, let's say if you're a Yankee fan, a World Series game where your boy is clearly safe at first and they called him out and that decides the series and we couldn't go back on instant replay to look at it. And you can, I mean, they're pretty quick nowadays, as you can see. I mean, sure, you can always complain and say, hey, it took 30 seconds instead of, 15 seconds, whatever it is, but it's pretty quick. It's gotten much quicker results-wise than it used to, but it's just funny. I mean, can you imagine going backwards to a world where we just rely on the human eye for every single call? It's crazy. These are updates that are necessary. I always remember a SportsCenter not top 10 play when I was like, I think it was Todd Helton, somebody where they reach and they're like 2 feet off the bag. And they reached as if they are on the bag, and the ump just got completely duped, and the call was out, even though there were no feet on a first base bag. Like, that stuff would never happen anymore. That's a 3-second replay review, and we're good, and we overturn, and we keep rolling, and we didn't screw up a game.
I always throw it back to the Detroit Tigers and that play at first base with the pitcher having the perfect game. Gallegos, and the umpire calls him safe and ruins the perfect game from him. And Miguel Cabrera, how he wanted to choke out Galarragos, and how Miguel Cabrera wanted to choke out that umpire. But yeah, I listen. My anxiety goes through the roof whenever I'm watching a Yankee game and that box is not there. So whenever that box is not there for us to see the visual strike zone, my anxiety goes through the roof. So yeah, I can't imagine us going back to a day where there's no instant replays or there's no box that
I love the box.
I love. Before, it was just something that they did on the nationally broadcast game, ESPN or Fox. But once it started going all throughout baseball, I'm like, yes. Seeing this as on a Yankees broadcast for the first time, I think it was 2010 or 2011. But yeah, I can't go back to seeing old games like that.
These are good tech changes for the sport, right? Yeah. You need all that. So I'm definitely a progressive baseball fan, but it's funny, often when you think progressive and new school, many of the things that you're a proponent of actually bring the game back to its more pure form, like we're talking about. A game that has less dead time is actually more of an original baseball game. That the dead time is a newer thing. It's the excessive dead time in a sport like that, right? So situations like that actually take you back, and often I think like fans aren't studying the game. There are leagues, there are competition committees, all of that and there are studies done that do a better job of telling people what they actually should like. I mean, if you said, hey, we're going to put a limit on how many times you can call timeout in a game or do a mound visit, there are many fans that were like, no, you don't need to do that. And that's going against what we used to do. And then now that it's here, almost everyone's like, oh, sweet. That's great.
Now everybody's on board.
Yeah, no one even notices it. You'll have the same thing with the pitch clock because everyone will adjust to it too. And you actually see with many minor leaguers, especially the younger ones that have only been in the minors for pitch clock time periods, like they come up and they get the ball and they pitch, and they just go. And the hitters, they stay in the box. It's just better.
Yeah.
Like, I bring it back to my high school basketball days. I think there were times when we needed back then a shot clock. It's like 2 minutes to go in the game, team's up 5 and they're playing keep away. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, even though it's high school, I'm like, we should have a shot clock. Sure, maybe it doesn't have to be 24 seconds, it can be 35. And some high schools do. And I think Jersey might have it now. I mean, I obviously haven't been in high school in decades, but I remember when I would play and I'm like, wait, why are we playing? Like, that's bad. That's a bad product. And that's not basketball. I'm like, we're playing keep away with 2 minutes left. Like, that's garbage. That's a different sport. I mean, soccer, you can do that to an extent too. And it's tougher. You can't really have a shot clock in soccer, but in basketball you can, and you should at every level. Once you get to probably high school is the time, because you're skilled enough at that point to play some legitimate keep away. And it's ridiculous. So But these are good changes.
Yeah, one more question before you go, because I know it's reaching that time, 12 o'clock. When you got into this game, right? Because me, for instance, these past 6 months, doing this show and being able to interview yourself, Jerry Ferrara. I had an interview last week with Jim Laritz, which was awesome. The Jerry Ferrara episode was my moment to like geek out as a fan. As being in this industry, what was that moment to you that you realized, like, oh shit, I'm actually here. Like I've actually made it, and I'm interviewing either an idol I grew up with or somebody that I watched growing up. What was that moment? Can you pinpoint to one?
I can pinpoint to one in terms of, because a lot of my work nowadays is calling games. So I'll pinpoint something two spots there. One is last year where I called the World Series for the first time, and that was for MLB International. So the game is on Fox within the United States. And then MLB International produces the game in at least the English language version of the game for many other countries around the world. So that was my role last year. And I've done it MLB International for the All-Star game. So some of the marquee events in baseball, to actually be able to call those. I mean, that's obviously more recent. I wasn't doing that when I first got into the biz, but that was a moment where you're like, holy shit, I'm calling the World Series, you know? And also I didn't even think about that. Like when I'm a kid, I was like, yeah, of course I would love to call the World Series, but I didn't think, just because there's only one human, Joe Buck's been calling, I mean, now it's Joe Davis, but Joe Buck's calling the World Series my entire life, basically, and my whole adult career. So it's like, it's just, even if you're in the business and that's what you want to do, it's just very difficult to actually crack that. But I didn't actually think, oh, wait, there's actually MLB International too. So all the fans in Canada, and I had, you know, a friend that was on vacation in Cancun. He's like, "Are you calling the World Series?" I was like, "Yeah, that's for MLB International." Because they're like, "I'm at a hotel bar and I'm listening to you." So that was a definitely pinch me moment. The other one, I'll take you further back in terms of game calling. Also was the World Baseball Classic, which is coming up again next spring, but it hasn't. What was the last one? Was 2017 at this point. The United States versus Dominican Republic in Miami really hit home for me, because I lived in Miami for a while. I went to many Marlins games. I actually really like the Marlins Park that exists now, that's been around for what, and now, I mean, it seems still fresh and new to me, but it's probably almost 10 years old at this point. But it's a really cool ballpark when it's full and when it's bumping. And unfortunately, you know, Marlins fans don't show up as much as they should sometimes. And also, to their fair point, the Marlins are usually not good. And so there's a little bit of both going on there. And Miami's just a tough city. It's they'll show up if you're a stud. If not, like, often they're not coming. But the point is, and I went through all of that. I worked within that. I was at games all the time. To be in the booth with one of my best friends too, and Cliff Floyd, calling USA DR in the World Baseball Classic, it even topped World Series in terms of the experience there. It was sold out, standing room only, loud, but not a vicious crowd, like a party crowd, standing, like World Cup playing instruments, and so much passion. And the game was crazy, and every moment was just blowing the damn roof off the place. So that was a moment for me where I'm like, I love this game, but I want to call games like this my entire life. Obviously, you're not going to replicate that situation very frequently, but those were some, you know, I would call pinch me moments. I don't have them as much with individuals. Like there are many players I loved and watched growing up and that I've worked with, but I just kind of look at them. I think this is part of like being able to be your best with them, is just looking at them as humans and being friends with them. So for me, it's been more of situations like World Series, World Baseball Classic. You're in the booth. You're the one that everyone's listening to. You know, millions of people are listening to you call that game. And as you can tell, there's a lot of passion on my end for doing that and enjoying it myself, but also making sure I'm giving everyone the best experience possible, which is documenting, informing, but then also entertaining them.
Yeah, and you know, you name drop Cliff Floyd. As a Yankee fan growing up, Cliff Floyd was the Met player that I wanted on the Yankees. So every video game I got, whether it was MLB The Show, MVP Baseball 2005, I always traded Cliff Floyd to the Yankees and always edited him to 99, 99, 99. And his speed was like he stole 150 bases one time and got 78 home runs in the season for me. So that was my childhood like favorite player that wasn't on the Yankee was Cliff Floyd.
I will let him know. And also the good news is, which they probably didn't have in the game at that point, the personality and the comedic level and all of that is 99. So that's the guy you want. And that is your clubhouse chemistry guy.
Well, you see it now.
Would want to go have a drink with Cliff. He's just a great dude. Yeah, you see it through his broadcast.
Yeah, you see it now. I follow him on Instagram, and when he was at the Mets old timer game, literally like a 5-year-old kid with his iPhone, like just going around with everybody. You just love it. And like you said, they're just people at the end of the day. Yeah, they're athletes. Yeah, they have some type of standing in society, but they're just people at the end of the day, and that's how they normally like to be treated, when it comes to that.
I agree. Also, I just want to make sure whenever you're done, I have one question for you before we go. So you got to let me know.
Go ahead, brother. Go ahead. Shoot. Yes,
sir. Because this is Yankees Morning Brew. So, and
yes.
I was working yesterday. I watched some of the Yanks game, and I watched plenty of Yanks, and I know very much. We didn't get too deep into what's going on with them, but quite simply, how are you feeling about your Yanks right now, and are they going to be okay? Like, you're watching every single Yanks game, I'm presuming, for the most part.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I have many thoughts on. And we got into it. We got into it for the first 10 minutes or so on, being too cute on moves, not showing off their financial might as much as they should sometimes, but also looking at the fact that, like, you do have a nice budget. You should be able to, there's one part of being able to be in the playoffs every year and be competitive, but why are you not converting that into titles more frequently in the recent past, besides 2009 over the past 20 something years? So, but let's hyper focus this year exactly where they're at. And I think they'll have a nice series against the Twins because they just own that team. And the Twins are actually in a bad spot right now. They're really banged up. Like, you think the Yanks have some injuries. The Twins are really banged up right now. Like, they're missing a ton of their top guys. So where do you think the Yanks are at? Like, compared to a couple months ago where you're like, hey, we're the favorite.
Oh, yeah. A couple months.
This is not the World Series favorite anymore.
A couple months ago, I was insufferable. I was super rambunctious. I was poking my chest out. I was that Yankee fan that you didn't want to be around at a bar if you get a few drinks in me. Yeah, that was me a couple months ago. But right now, we're back to reality. The Astros do have a better record than us, but I'm telling other Yankee fans, just relax. This team, just like you talked about with the Twins, this Yankee team isn't 100% healthy. The injury bug bit us dramatically. The first 2 months or 2.5 months of the season, the Yankees, knock on wood, was blessed to be the only major league team that didn't have anybody on the IL that was a big contributor, right? But then as soon as Michael King went down, Chad Green went down, it was just literally like flies just being shot out of the air, and it was one after the other, one after the other, one after the other. Right now, I'm complacent with where the team is at right now. Would I like to see them be a little bit better? Yeah, of course I would like to see them be a little bit better. Do I trust them in the postseason at this moment? No. If I have to be honest and be realistic, no, I do not trust this team in the postseason. Garrett Cole, I know a lot of Yankee fans love to beat up on Garrett Cole, but since Garrett Cole has put the pinstripe on, he has not missed a start.
Yeah,
he started every game. He is super durable. He is out there fighting. Even if he gives up 6 runs in the first 3 or 4 innings, he's going to give you 6 innings. He may even give you 7 innings.
That's
he's
not the guy that
in
the
my
Yankees
mind
should be going after by any means.
Yeah, that is
not
exactly
the guy they should be picking on. Yeah, he posts, right? He's had some ups and downs, right? You maybe aren't getting a consistent brilliance all of the time from him, but he's certainly capable of it. You're right, and he's showing up when they need him. So, no, that's
that's not the
your
guy.
Your fan base is going after him. That's the wrong person to be going after. I think the construction of this team, it's funny, some of the things we talked about in the offseason actually have they didn't emerge for a while, but then they did eventually. And for me, at least in the offseason, I was like, their bullpen looks great. And it was even better until those are the big injuries right there. Yeah, King and Green eventually hurt, and that hurts a ton, I think, for the playoffs as well. But the bigger picture of, is there enough offense, and is it a dynamic enough offense? And then is there enough starting pitching? The starting pitching exceeded expectations dramatically for the first half of the season, but these were, the Nestor Cortez stories of the world. And then, Severino coming back for a second. So guys like that, but really because in the offseason, we were trying to keep it simple for, on MLB Network, for example, to fans of all 30 teams going, isn't it just kind of Garrett Cole? And then what else are we working with here? So the Montage trade hasn't worked out. I don't know, at least for now, he hasn't been great. He's been up and down too. And I'm not entirely sure how his shoulder feels. Like, if I had to guess in the offseason, or if I spoke to him personally, how he's feeling, or, we don't get to look at medicals on trades and stuff like that. But I just think overall on the offensive side, where the heck would they be without Aaron Judge? Like, this was a team where in the beginning of
Oh
the season,
God.
you're going, oh, you know, because everyone was clicking, everyone was hitting, and now most guys have underperformed and or been hurt or both. And you're like, I mean, it's Judge and what, which you kind of look at in the offseason too. Like, there's some nice players. I think also prospect wise, don't fall too in love. Like, you know, we've talked baby bombers in the past and how many guys actually worked out from that crew. So, I mean, I can go all day on where I think this team is good. They're not great. And I think that in the beginning of the season, you know, most of us fell for that. We're like, oh, is this a juggernaut? It's not a juggernaut. It's a good team. It's a team that is capable of winning the AL East, but it's not a team that's going to steamroll through everyone. And if I'm doing power rankings, and I looked at the roster at the beginning of the season, they're about where I actually thought they would end up. Like, if I just close my eyes and open them, be like, oh, and the Yanks are, what is it right now? 5 games up. That would make sense to me. Like, if I close my eyes and open and you told me, oh, they're 20 games up, I would have been like, holy shit. Like, I think they're really working out for them. So on offense, I mean, I'd be concerned. I just think it's so Judge reliant. And I still look, even like yesterday, I'm watching the game, I'm like, why? I mean, and Archer learned after the first time he faced him, he doubled off of him and had a shot of hitting that one over the wall. He didn't even get all of it. And then he walked him next time around. It's like, you'll see this even more in the playoffs. Like, cool. Someone else get hot. Someone else beat me. At any point that I can, I'm giving him Barry Bonds treatment. I am walking Judge, or at the very least, if I'm a pitcher that has good command and I can basically avoid the middle of the zone and just kind of be okay with walking him and giving him 4 or 5 bad pitches, cool, I'll do that because he is so above and beyond anyone else on that ball club.
Yeah, and we've seen the evolution of Judge, especially this season when it comes to pitchers pitching around him. And once he noticed that, he started swinging at the first pitch he saw, and he was getting that fastball, like you said, on the corner outside of the plate of the zone, and taking it to right field and shooting it over that short porch in right field that the Yankees have and taking advantage of it. But yeah, to your point, if I'm a major league manager, I'm not pitching to Judge. You know, the fans may not like it. The team may not like it. I don't care. I'm here to win a series, win a game, and go to the next round. That's all I care about. So if I have to pitch around Judge and give him the Barry Bonds treatment every at bat, he's going to get it until somebody else in that Yankees lineup gets hot. And even if somebody gets hot in that Yankees lineup, I'm still not going to pitch to Judge.
Yes, and I'm also massively disappointed, and it's coming to bite them too. For example, like, I have one of my good friends who's a big Yanks fan, and multiple times last year, he's like, who we getting? It's like, we're definitely getting a shortstop. He's like, do you think we would get Correa with everything that's gone on with the Stros in the past? And I was like, first of all, I've been around Correa a lot. You could say whatever you want about what happened with the 17 Astros. Carlos himself, great dude. Once he's within a ball club, he's one of those guys that's helping the rest of the ball club. And I think he would have been great there. But at the same time, I was like, I don't think that they're going to sign him. I was like, I think they're going to sign Corey Seager. And I think he's going to. Now the Rangers, they just gave him an insane contract. Like, that's a big contract. Corey Seager's a stud, and he's been good even this year on a crappy team. But I was like, if you had told me a year ago, right? If we go back to like August, September of 2021, that's who I thought they were going to land. And it made a ton of sense. That was the kind of player they needed. Middle of the order bat, clutch, can handle his position, young. They're missing out on these guys. It's been years now where it's like no Harper, no Machado, no Correa, no Seager. You know, we're gonna do Donaldson and kind of Falefa, and that, I mean, really, if you're breaking it down right now, has not worked out well for them. And it's not like that was a cheap acquisition either. So for me, you know, I get it that you don't want to necessarily give out that 10-year contract, but if you're gonna do that, then do that for a 25-year-old or a 26-year-old. Like, those are the guys that you do want to pay for that. So I've just been surprised that they haven't, you know, kind of gone for the jugular and made moves like that. And I think it's really bit them in the short term from taking that next step. And you can sell prospects all you want. And I am like the prospect guy. I host a good portion of the draft. I call the futures game. I'm all in. Like, I love prospects, and I'm not saying trade your guys away. I'm more saying don't rely on them for everything. If the time to win is now and you're selling me on Anthony Volpe, like, let's worry about that later. At the worst case, Anthony Volpe is the next Jeter, and I move Seager over to third, and I'm still in great shape. Like, who cares? So I just didn't get that on the short term, unless you really were, like, hey, and again, Seager's had injuries, so maybe they were against the medicals, but I'm just the Cole deal. Great. Love that. We haven't seen as many of those deals in the last few years as I expected. Hey, top 3 guy on the market, we're getting 1 or 2 of them.
I think when it comes to Garrett Cole, the Yankees have had a lock on Garrett Cole ever since he was in high school, right? They drafted him originally. He rejected them. He went to college. He was drafted by Pittsburgh. Ever since, when he made his major league debut with Pittsburgh, the Yankees were always trying to trade for him, didn't want to give up the prospects for him. So when the Yankees hyper focus on a player, they tend to get that player or go after that player with Garrett Cole.
But why did they get him? Think about this. The thing, why did they end up getting the player? You can say all you want, oh, Cole's a Yanks fan and all of that. He loves California. If the Angels, because the Angels didn't end up getting him, right? And they wanted him too. If the Angels offered Garrett Cole $400 million, guess what uniform he's wearing?
He would have been with the Angels.
He would have been with the Angels. Yeah. So my point with the Yanks is, for example, Harper loves Philly, he's there, whatever. His deal is in the low 3s, right? I think it's 13, 330. If the Yanks offered 350, guess what uniform Bryce is wearing right now?
Yeah, and Bryce Harper, he's a perfect example because I don't care what anybody said. Bryce Harper was tailor-made to be in the Yankee uniform. I don't care what you say. Here. He has the face, he has the attitude, he has the ego. He would have been as cocky as Reggie Jackson was when he was with the Yankees, right? I think Bryce Harper would have been a perfect fit.
Yeah, he elevated.
Yeah, same thing with Manny Machado also. I don't know. I think Brian Cashman is trying to reinvent the wheel, right? He won in 2009, but he only got 1 championship after that spending spree with CeCe, AJ Burnett, Mark Teixeira, and who else? He was burnt by the Ellsbury deal. I think Cashman is scared of making that commitment to a player long term, for that 10-year deal, because he doesn't want his resume as a GM to be burnt by it, because if you're a GM, you don't make the move, that's not going to be on your resume. What is on your resume is the moves that you make that don't pan out, that waste money, like a Kei Agagua, Carl Pavano, Jacoby Ellsbury, and so on and so on. LaTroy Hawkins back in the day, Steve Carsey back in the day in 2003, 2004. So yeah, it's been so many bad moves that are on Cashman's resume. You don't have many of those moves that he didn't make on his resume that you don't remember.
Yeah, but more importantly, it's just, and I don't have one on, but it's just, it's this guy, it's the ring, and sometimes, you also have to think of it with some of these players that we just mentioned as, if they're like for Machado, he signed a 10-year, $300 million, right? And that contract has actually worked out beautifully so far. He is a consistent superstar for the Pods. That's been a bargain deal. And the point I'm raising here is, even if the last 2-3 years of that deal, if Manny is not great or goes through injuries or whatever at the end, just think of it as spreading out the dollars, where you're almost like front loading or you're backloading a deal, say, right? Because even if he's not worth $30 million a year by 2030, whatever, which also, prices will change and they always go up anyway. Point is, I think he's a $40-50 million player right now. So you're getting, don't always look at the average annual value. That's just helping to spread out the money over the years. Like, he's worth more than that now in terms of what he's doing. And I know these are astronomical numbers, but that is the type of value in production that player is putting up. So being concerned about my money to spend, making a bad deal. Yeah. I think, front offices, they love to pick out oh, look, I found Gio Urshela or Luke Voigt, whatever. I'm all for that. You have to do that. And the Dodgers do that super well. They've found over the years the Justin Turners and the Chris Taylors and all of that. But the Dodgers also then go, we're trading for Mookie Betts and we're shoving in our chips, and he won us a World Series and he might win us another, and he does something amazing for us every single day. Like, you have to do that. It's not the Yanks aren't cheap. We're not saying that. It's I think there's been, just over the past few years, some superstars that made a ton of sense for me in a Yankee uniform, and their payroll's still high. And they're I don't necessarily always understand the way that they're spreading it out and not just going for it with, like, they needed a shortstop badly, and they needed to figure out the left side of the infield in general. And I don't like the decision that they ultimately made. It just, it didn't click for me.
Neither did I. And Correa is somebody that I want to be to the Yankees to go after and sign this offseason. That's who I wanted. And, especially since Correa, if Volpe was the plan, Correa already, there was rumors that he was already open to playing third base for the Mets if they signed Javi Baez. So if Volpe's playing at shortstop, you could have easily had that conversation with Correa. Be like, listen, if this kid comes up, would you move over? And if he says yes, sign him. But us, the Yankees, and this is what is more frustrating, Scott, is that the Yankees took on Josh Donaldson's contract and IKF's money, and the Twins were able to use that money to sign Correa. That was the more frustrating part of anything. Because if you think of it, Josh Donaldson is making $25 million and IKF is making $8 million. That's Correa's annual value right there.
They worked him. They won that deal big. And also,
they definitely did.
They didn't even sign him to a 10-year deal. They signed him to a 3-year deal with opt-outs, and he's probably going to opt out because he's been great this year. So that worked out so well for Minnesota. Look, Minnesota was bad last year. They were a bad ball club, and even they've been bit hard, much harder. If you look at right now, like Buxton obviously has always had his issues staying on the field, and he's so good when he is on the field, and he's hurt again right now. But this is a team that has been much more decimated by injuries than the Yankees. And look where they're at. They're competing for a division, and a lot of it has to do with a signing like Correa. I mean, when you redo that and you look back, you're like, forget the Donaldson and IKF move. How did the Yankees not throw 3 years, 140 million, the same deal with a little bit more, right? Top that deal at Correa. He's all over that. He would have been in New York and he would have thrived. And this is what would have happened. He would have been great and he would have opted out. And then you worry about that the next go round, for the next free agent time period, where there's also 4 more shortstops that are coming off free agency this year. You got Bogarts, Correa will be a free agent most likely again, Trey Turner, Dansby Swanson. So I just think they have to make moves like that. And if you're selling me on prospects, that prospect should already be up. Otherwise, these are what we call for rich teams good problems. If the biggest problem you have is we're so damn good that we have 2 shortstops and we got to figure out what to do with them, good teams figure that out and somebody moves over and we move on.
That's what the Yankees just do back in the Yankees moved Yogi Berra to left field for Elston Howard. Like we could have figured it out. But talking about contracts, I got this question because this is the big question I wanted to ask you. What do you think this man's going to get?
And this is the last one, only because I'll say, because I got a YouTube meeting in 3 minutes, but I've really enjoyed it, by the way.
Definitely. I would love to have you on later on in the year, probably before the postseason.
Absolutely. So what do I think he gets, or where do I think he goes? I think whichever is more interesting.
Easy, whichever's easier for you, because
what does he get? He definitely gets more than he was offered in April, whatever that number was, 213, 230. The most he was definitely offered was in the 230s range. Although, and when I was reading something yesterday, one of the writers I liked said it was like 213, whatever it was, low twos. Much more than that. It's at least in the mid to upper twos, right? And all this depends on the years and the creativity of the contract. But he's getting paid much more than he was offered by the Yanks. And maybe, he ends up with the Yanks, they just have to pay more. So the thing with the Yanks was they were like, all right, this is what we're going to set. And then it's not like, he can become a free agent and the Yanks can still pay him and just outbid everyone. So that's still certainly possible and doable and most likely. But I'm going to go with the, a little bit of the dark horse candidate. And I think the San Francisco Giants, that's the team I have circled. Like they're coming off this is a mediocre season for them. They desperately need a superstar to build around. They went hard after Bryce Harper and didn't end up with him. I think that is the threat if I'm a Yanks fan, because I think how much will they push the Yanks to spend? If the Yanks are just closing their eyes, blank check, whatever he gets offered, will beat it, all good, then fine. But that's the team where if you ask me today, what uniform is he wearing next year? I think he's going to be a Giant. I think they're going to go above and beyond. They're going to overpay. I think they need it. And that's a team that, if you remember back in the day, they will go to that level to spend for a player like that. And he's from Fresno, or at least played out there.
He's from the Bay Area.
So it's not like he's going to have a problem with that either. So, and if push comes to he's going to take the most dough. So if the Giants are going to give him a $285 million contract and the Yanks are like, we're hard stop at 260, not getting the player.
God, you just broke my heart, Scott.
I'm not saying it's happening. I'm just saying that just be careful about that. And if I had to predict right now, because I like some spiciness, and I just have this really strong feeling that the Giants are going to say, hey guys, let's sit down and we're going to offer him what we're going to outdo anybody. We are going to offer him more than what the Yanks are, because they have shown restraint. This is one spot where we need to stop showing restraint. I don't know for sure if that's who they want, but I just have a feeling, I mean, this is the guy in the sport right now, and they have a chance to get him, and he's a California kid, the whole deal. I could see the Giants pulling the trigger because they need to start showing their might again too. That's an aging ball club, not spending as much as they should. They need some superstars to revolve around that also set the tone. Like you pay for that too. You pay for what he brings. He represents the ball club. He sets the example. He does the interviews. He's handled the big cities. So he would thrive in San Francisco too. So if he's going for most money, I could see the Giants outbidding the Yankees. I think that could be real.
Oh my God. Well, this entire interview was awesome until these last 30 seconds that Scott literally just put a nightmare scenario in my head, but I loved it though. No, you got to understand if you're a judge, right? And I'll let you go right after this. If you're a judge, you got to put yourself in his shoes. Do you trust the Yankees over the next 10 years or do you trust the Giants over the next 10 years? And it's going to come down to money and where he's at comfortable.
Yeah, just money, because both of them are going to compete. Those are high, those are teams that compete, contend. They have smart front offices, they have money. So they're both going to be good. Like if you're trying to predict which team's going to win more titles over the next 10 years, he's not able to do that. Almost nobody is. I can confidently say both of those teams they're going to hustle. They're going to put their all into it. It's not like you sign up with Pittsburgh, that's where you'd actually have to look and be like, is this team going to actually surround me with good ball players? Both of those teams are going to do that. So it's going to come down to this period. And they both I look at this stuff too. Tax rates are both pretty similar. So that's not going to be a thing. It's not like, Texas does have that significant advantage, or Florida, some of those states, California, New York City, very similar. So it's just who's offering the biggest and best deal. That's if you're putting those two teams up against each other, that's in my mind, what's going to happen.
Yeah, but Scott, bro, I definitely appreciate you for coming on. We definitely have to set something up later on for before the postseason. Make sure you tell both our best friend Cliff Floyd hi. Just make sure you tell Cliff Floyd hi.
I will tell him hi. And also, for anyone that's still here, not just promoting this, but if you have questions about this or you want to be in our fantasy league to get your cards involved, please, hit me up on socials, at Scott Braun, very simply, just, Instagram, Twitter, whatever. Shoot me a note and let's chat.
Yeah, definitely. Scotty, later, brother. Love you, man. Appreciate you, my guy. Love this conversation, bro.
You too.
Later. Oh, man, that was a great convo. Love the conversation with Scotty Braun. That was awesome. That was so awesome. Only gems. Guys, look out. Make sure you guys go on Twitter. Make sure you hit up Scott Braun so you can figure out the fantasy league. If you want to get into that fantasy league. My man, Nathan, of course. Breaking news, Yankees shortstop prospect Trey Sweeney has been called up to the Somerset Patriots from Hudson Valley. Thank you so much, Nathan. Check that out. Frederick, salute, brother. Thank you for being in the chat. I appreciate you, my guy. The Yankees did have a game yesterday, so I'll just run down that real quick, because the conversation was awesome. And I just want to touch on this real quick. Because Judge hit his 54th of the year. Right, so we got Aaron Judge hitting 54th of the year. It's 2 for 3. Gleyber Torres was 1 for 4. Stanton needs to pick it up, 0 for 3. Donaldson 1 for 2. Trevino 0 for 3. Cabrera 0 for 3. IKF 2 for 3. LeCastro 0 for 3. Marwin 1 for 2. And then the pitching, Taillon struggled a little bit in that 5th inning, but he was able to fight through it. He pitched 6 hits, 2 runs, 2 walks, 3 strikeouts. Weissert, the rookie, came up. He's been silent and lights out ever since his first one of the year, his first appearance. Inning in the 3rd, no hits, no runs, 2 walks and 2 strikeouts. Wandy Peralta, the ageless one, Wandy Peralta, an inning and 2/3, no hits, no runs, no walks, 2 strikeouts. And then Clay Holmes, he pitched the inning, no hits, no runs, no walks, and 2 strikeouts. And I appreciate everybody who was tuning in. Appreciate you, Chris. That was a great interview with Scott. I'm not gonna lie. I think that we would have been able to go on for hours if Scott didn't have another meeting that he had to head to. But let me touch on the chat real quick. Salute to Uncle Foxy who came in, who was in the building. My man Frankie Rivera. Hey, yo, Frankie. What is good, dog? Hope all is well with you. Of course, Mikey Mazza, he had to dip out. My brother Keith Saunders, who may be going to the game Friday with me. I'm not too sure. But guys, appreciate everybody for tuning in. This has been an awesome episode of the Yankees Morning Brew. Please enjoy your Tuesday, the rest of your Tuesday. And FYI, my birthday is September 8th. Your man's going to be turning 33, so I'm going to be turning up Friday. Yes, sir. Like I said, it's been a great episode of the Yankees Morning Brew. I am your host, Project Nerd HQ. And guys, a peace out.